Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Paddle Monster newsletter. I hope everyone had a great Christmas, and I wish everyone a really happy New Year and a really successful 2025. A couple of weeks ago, we started a discussion on goal setting, and we looked at, as the first part of the goal setting process, we looked at evaluating or assessing the year that you've just completed, and we talked about that process. So this week, I'd actually like to talk about the process of setting goals for the coming season. And I think what you should be doing is taking a look at the answers to the questions you asked yourself about how the last season went, figuring out where your strengths and weaknesses are, and think about what is a realistic level of improvement for the coming year. Okay, and you can have like a stretch goal where your improvement is quite a significant level, and then maybe a little bit dialed back version of that, which is maybe more realistic as your targeted performance or level of improvement for the coming season. But the thing I want to emphasize is that, in my opinion and my experience in sport, the most successful way to set goals is based on performance. And by performance, I don't mean race result. I mean performance, like how well or how fast you're able to paddle. The problem when you set your goals based on a race result is that whether you achieve that goal or not doesn't always depend on you. It often depends on the person that you're racing against, or the people that you're racing against, the conditions that you're racing in, or perhaps even some things that are beyond your control. But if you set your goal based on performance, like how fast you're able to paddle or what pace you're able to sustain for the distance that you're racing, that depends entirely on you, really. And you'll be able to monitor your progress towards achieving that pace in a race in all of your training, in all the marker workouts you do in your training, all the time controls and tests that you do on the water. You should have a very good idea from your day-to-day training, providing you're using a GPS, on how well you're progressing towards that goal. But if you set your result as, say, for example, I want to, get on the podium at Chattajack, or I want to win, my local SUP series for my age class, or some result that's based on, or some goal that's based on a result. These are things that are beyond your control. And I'll use my experience at Chattajack as an example. Whenever I went to Chattajack and raced, I always knew, what pace I should be able to sustain. And it obviously, some years it was a little bit faster than others because of the flow in the river. But I knew what type of pace I was able to sustain. And I knew that, most of the time, if I was able to sustain that pace, it gave me a good shot at winning that race, which actually happened, the first 5 times I did it. But the last year I did it was a little bit different, because a certain Danny Ching showed up, and another really fast paddler, Olivier Dermalou from France, showed up. And these guys are good. And suddenly the pace that I was able to sustain, which was as good as any of the other years, really was basically just good enough to keep with these guys. And I knew that keeping with Danny Ching isn't good enough, because Danny Ching is a better sprinter than me. And so I needed to be ahead of Danny, when we came into the final sprint along the dock. And the pace that I was able to sustain wasn't good enough to do that. Does that mean that I was a failure? No. I did a pace that was, like a really high level pace for me. It just, came down to the fact that Danny Ching, is better, or was better in that particular race. It doesn't hurt that he was, 15 or 20 years younger than me. But Danny has got a huge track record. He's a legend in our sport. And we came into the finish area by Hales Bar Dam together, and he was able to beat me in the sprint. Does that mean that I was a failure? Well, I would have preferred to come first or second, but I ended up coming third. I don't consider it a failure, because I traveled at a pace that was the best that I could possibly do. It was I achieved my goal for the season in terms of my pace. I got beat by people that were better than me on the day, and that was beyond my control. And I found this to be true throughout my experience racing sprint canoe. That generally, if I set a goal, a performance goal that was measurable, like what pace could I sustain for a 1,000-meter race, I knew that if I could, years where I could sustain like a 3:55 pace for 1,000 meters, I knew that that gave me a very good shot of being in the podium. It didn't always mean I'd get there because sometimes the guys that were racing were better on the day. But it gave me a chance. And really, this is all that you can ask for. The problem when you set a goal based on result is that it puts a lot of pressure on you to achieve that result. So imagine you're in a race and you're paddling at a pace that is faster than you've been ever able to sustain before. You should be very excited about that. But if you set your goal as winning, and there are two guys in the race that seem to be, a little bit ahead of you, or when you're in the draft train, they seem to be not working as hard as you are in the draft train to keep up, and you feel like you're having a harder time in your leads than they are. You're getting some information that they might be faster than you, and it looks like maybe they're going to have a shot at winning. What does that do to you and your confidence and your psychology if you've predicated your entire season on the goal of winning in this particular race? And the only reason you might not be winning in the race at this moment is because two better guys showed up. Does that make you a failure? No. But does that put more pressure on you? Are you likely to maybe crumble because suddenly you're not in the position you wanted to be in because these two other good guys are there? And does that mean that you get tight, you don't perform as well, you make mistakes because you're stressed about it, and you end up performing, in a subpar fashion because of that, right? It can actually lead to your racing more poorly than you're capable of if your mindset is on results, not on process. Right? If you're focused on the results, not the process. So setting goals that are performance based on what time you want, what pace you want to sustain, or what speed you want to sustain for a given distance. Not only are they measurable, which is really important because you can measure your progress throughout the year towards achieving your ultimate goal for the pace you want to sustain in the race. They're very specific, right? And that's another important thing about goals is they need to be specific. They depend entirely on you, not on what other racers showed up to the race. And yes, you have to temper, the pace that you're traveling at a little bit. You have to adjust it a little bit if there's a headwind or a tailwind or a bit of a current or whatever. But from day in and day out training with your GPS, whether you're able to sustain that pace or not, right? So, on race day, all you got to, if you've been able to sustain it in training leading up to the race, all you got to do is paddle like you do in training and you'll be doing it in the race, right? So, set your goals based on performance, not on result. Performance and result are two different things, right? Result is the outcome. Performance is what you give, the performance you give or what you do to get a particular outcome. That gives you a chance to get a particular outcome. And it's much more useful because you can, if your goals are set on performance, you can monitor your progress towards your goal every day in training using your GPS. So that's the big thing that I want to stress to people. You wouldn't believe how many people I've met in paddling who probably don't have a lot of sport experience, but are really avid paddlers and really excited about racing. And I ask them what their goals are, and they start telling me that they want to, get top 3 in their local sub series, or they want to win a race that they're going to, in 2 weeks, or they want to, be in the podium at their age group for their age group at Chattajack. And these are all great sort of dream goals, but that shouldn't be your real goal because you're putting yourself under undue pressure on race day, and you're setting goals that ultimately are beyond your control. And you could have the best race that you've ever had in your entire life, by all accounts, and come second or third because better people showed up to the race, and you leave feeling like a failure because you didn't achieve your goal. So set your goals based on performance, not on results. Just like when you're paddling and racing and trying to do your best, you should be focusing on process and not outcome, right? It's the same principle. So set your goals in that fashion, and don't be afraid to set, some really far out high level goals, but also maybe have some goals that are a little bit scaled down from those really high level stretch goals that you might be able to, to live with. If you say, for example, you're setting your goal, you want to get 15 seconds a kilometer faster for 10K. That's a fair bit of work that you have to do to go that much faster. But, maybe you'd settle for 5 or 10 seconds faster because that's still, a success if you're improving. So, you can have a stretch goal, like your dream level of improvement, but then you might want to have a secondary goal that you could settle with if you don't quite get far enough towards your dream goal. Love to talk to paddlers about goal setting. If you want to talk about the goals that you've set for yourself, and more importantly, what you need to do to achieve those goals in your training, I'm here for you. That's what coaches are for. So don't be afraid to reach out on Paddle Monster, and I'd be awfully happy to hear what your goals are and help you work towards them. So I'll leave it at that. All the best for the new year. Enjoy your New Year's Eve. Remember that you're as much fun as you're going to have on New Year's Eve that you're training, and you should have a workout on New Year's Day or the day after. So don't do anything on New Year's Eve that's going to compromise your workouts later in the week. And have a great and successful 2025. And most of all, enjoy your paddling this year. All the best. Happy New Year.